Right. I'm going to start the session off by showing you what we feel is a really powerful video around the use of community defibs and how they save lives. So let me just start that for you. Can you hear that?
I can, yes.
Okay, these are just a couple more of the photos of just a few more of the defibs that we've got at the moment situated around some of our sites. We should have had a guest speaker on today, Martin from Community Heartbeat Trust, but unfortunately Martin's been called away at short notice, so can't join us. However, he has pre-recorded a video for us, which we're going to watch in a minute. Once the video is finished, if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. But if there is anything that is slightly too technical or above our knowledge, what we will do is we'll pass those on to Martin, get his answers, and we'll get those back to you. So here we go with Martin's presentation.
Hello and welcome to this session from the Community Heartbeat and the way we've worked with Mid-Counties Co-operative. My name is Martin Fagan. I'm the National Secretary of the Community Heartbeat Trust. In the next 10 minutes or so, what we're going to try and do is cover a few things. We're going to try and understand who CHD are and what the relationship is with Mid-Counties Co-operative. What is community defibrillation? What doing it right is important. Demonstration of a typical community defibrillator, in fact the very one that we're using with Mid-Counties Co-operative, and of course answer any questions you may have. So by way of starting, we've actually worked with Mid-Counties Co-operative since 2013. And the Community Heartbeat Trust is a national charity. We're not a company. We're a true not-for-profit. That is, at the end of every year, any surpluses are used to support needy causes such as homeless centres, children's organisations, etc., religious centres. No money goes to shareholders or similar. We're the leading charity in the development of community defibrillation and training, otherwise known as CPAD schemes. And our ethos is all about governance, sustainability and resilience at the core of everything we do. And what do we mean by that? We mean that all the aspects of the defibrillator should be tracked and records kept, that the defibrillator should be sustainable, so it should be as good in year 10 as it is in year 1, and it should be a part of a resilience program within the community. So it's not just about putting a defibrillator in, but it's all the things that surround it, and the first aid and the understanding, and most importantly, the education. We're advisors to NHS England, NHS Wales, and a member of the Save a Life Cymru campaign. And in the UK, we have the only defibrillator governance system, and that's called WebNOS, and that's been around since 2011. Our other claim to fame is that we were first ever to propose the use of telephone kiosks, and we're still a partner to BT. And the very first kiosk we did was back in 2009 in Hampshire. So let's firstly address the legal issues. The reason for that is that people always ask about legal and can I be sued? And the short answer is, no, you can't. You're protected under 3 elements of law, and those 3 elements are when you call 999, the NHS asks you to do something, help the patient, do chest compressions, use a defibrillator. So the NHS takes the clinical liability. You haven't got to worry about that. The NHS takes that clinical liability. You're also covered by the SARA Act, which is the Social Action Responsibility and Heroism Act, and that's basically is a Good Samaritan type act that covers you for trying to help anybody in a life-threatening situation. And the third element of law is the law ever being sued. Now, in order to be sued, the person trying to sue you would have to prove that whatever you did made the situation worse than its natural outcome. Well, the natural outcome in cardiac arrest is death. How can you possibly make it worse? It's impossible to be sued. Now, there's lots of locations where defibrillators are put. There's village halls. There's obviously the kiosks that we've just mentioned. We're also doing quite a large project called the Street Side Project, which is putting them in advertising kiosks throughout cities. But the important thing is that within Mid-Counties Co-operative, we've actually now worked for about 34 sites across the country. And what we've tried to do is to have standardized equipment with standardized processes, the governance system in place, the resilience program in place, and make sure these are sustainable. The co-op is all about partnership in the community. And that's what we really want to do with these defibrillators, make sure it's a partnership, not only between us and the co-op, but also the co-op and the people in its communities. So in every location, we put in high quality equipment. We make sure that that equipment is looked after, and the co-ops themselves actually check and make sure that the equipment is well looked after. And we conduct training courses in the community to make sure that everybody in the community really does understand. Now, what's it all about? It's this thing called chain of life, otherwise known as the chain of survival. And this is a 5-step process that very simply says that if you can check the patient and recognize that the patient actually needs help, you can call 999 as quickly as you can do and answer the questions of the ambulance service, start those chest compressions, and then get a defibrillator on them as quickly as possible. If you can do that process, those 4 stages, in around 3 minutes, you'll save half to 3/4 of patients. If it takes you 10 minutes to do those 4 stages, only about 5% of patients are going to be saved. What that means in reality is that the quicker you can bring all those elements together, the better the outcome for the patient. And that's why we put defibrillators in the center of communities, so that accessing that defibrillator is as quickly as possible, and therefore the various links in that chain are kept as short as possible. Now, the heart, after cardiac arrest, dies by about 20% per minute. Now, you often see the figure of 10% per minute quoted by lots of people, and that's fine if you're a dog. But in humans, it's about 20% per minute. And the whole idea is keeping that heart alive, and that's where the chest compressions come in. So the chest compressions take over the pumping of the heart, and if they're taking over the pumping of the heart, blood and oxygen goes around the body, and the heart stays alive. In other words, you move that graph towards the right. Thus, chest compressions are really, really important. And we'll come back to that in a second. So looking at the chain of life again, we check the patient to make sure that they are in cardiac arrest, they've collapsed, they're unconscious, they're unresponsive and gone a funny colour, and no signs of breathing. So they've got cardiac arrest. So the next thing to do is call 999 and ask for an ambulance. And when you go through to the ambulance service, they're going to ask you 2 questions initially. One is the patient conscious? And the other question is the patient breathing? And if they're in cardiac arrest, the answer to those will be no. Now, they'll then go on to activate the ambulance, so it's on its way to you, but they're going to ask you two more questions. One is they're going to ask you, are you on your own with the patient, or is there somebody else with you? Now, if you're on your own with the patient, they will simply tell you to stay with that patient to do chest compressions until help arrives. The other thing is that every ambulance service sets a little radius around every defibrillator, which is called the activation radius. And very simply, that means if the cardiac arrest occurs and the incident occurs within that radius, they'll tell you where the defibrillator is and how to gain access to it. If it's outside of that radius, they won't tell you. So in situations like that, where people are on their own or maybe an outlying farm in the village, that's where additional services come in and very useful. So things like community volunteer groups, or vets in our terminology, come in. So part of the resilience program is to say, what else can you do in that community? Maybe we should have communities of volunteers as well to try and help in these medical emergencies. Now, cardiac arrest is caused by 92 different causes. Most people think of heart attack, but choking, electrocution, asphyxia, drowning, carbon monoxide, severe asthma, and our friend COVID-19 are all contributors. But the point is, it affects at any age. Anybody from the age of 8 to 88 can be affected. The cause may be different depending on the age group that person's in, and the most common of those is heart attack. That's the one most people think about. But in the UK, roughly 1 in every 1,000 adults per annum, equating to about 60,000 adults per annum in the UK, will suffer a cardiac arrest. Children are defined as 7 and under, or under 25 kilograms, and in this group it's very rare to have cardiac arrest. It's usually around 10 to 20 cases per annum, which, if you work that out in terms of the numbers of children in that age group, which is about 3.4 million, means that in an average community, a child having a cardiac arrest is going to happen once every 3,000 or so years. So it's not common at all. Now, there are differences between heart attack and cardiac arrest. So heart attack is where you have crushing chest pain. Okay, and that crushing chest pain gives shortness of breath and it gives sweating. It can be sudden, but it also can build up over a period of time. And some people think it's a bit like indigestion. And generally it's caused by blockage in the arteries, usually a blood clot or something similar. And because it's usually a blood clot, what the ambulance service will tell you to do is chew an aspirin, because aspirin dissolves blood clots. If there's oxygen available, then ask you to put the patient on oxygen. Keep the patient calm until help arrives. Now, cardiac arrest is different. Cardiac arrest is where the heart sort of goes crazy. It's not a plumbing issue, it's an electrical issue. So the electricity in the heart goes completely haywire. The victim will stop breathing and can't respond. They become unconscious very quickly. Okay, begin those chest compressions as quickly as possible, because you've got to keep the blood pumping around the body and the oxygen flowing. And if you're on your own, you carry on that till the ambulance arrives. Call 999. The call handler will direct you to the nearest ambulance, nearest defibrillator, and if there is somebody there with you, tell them to go and fetch it. So, check the patient, call 999, start those chest compressions. Chest compressions are really important. Doing chest compressions is not difficult to do. One hand over the other, elbows straight and locked. Press down on the person's chest 2 times per second, and right in the middle of the chest. You know where the middle of the chest is, because if you feel along the bottom of the ribs, you come to a knobbly bit in the middle. If you put your 2 fingers on the knobbly bit and then rest your other hand with your little finger resting on the 2 fingers, it means your hand's in the middle of the chest. Okay, it's also roughly approximation between the nipples. So press down about 2 inches, 5 to 6 centimeters. Okay, third the chest depth in somebody who's a fairly small frame, and pump away 2 times per second. Okay, so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Allow the chest to fully recoil between the compressions, because you've got to leave time for the heart to refill with blood again before you pump it. Now, because of COVID, okay, we don't give breaths anymore, and it's really advised to put a light cloth or a handkerchief or something similar over the patient's nose and face. Don't give any breaths. And if you want to practice this at home, use a good stiff pillow off your bed, or 2 toilet rolls tied together to practice at home. But remember, you cannot harm the patient, number 1, and don't worry if you hear a crack, just carry on. Okay, all that is the ribs dislocating. It actually gets easier, so wouldn't worry about it. So you carry on those chest compressions, okay, until 1 of 3 things happens. Either the patient recovers, which is unlikely in cardiac arrest, but it may happen if it's respiratory arrest. Number 2, you're too tired to continue. So if you are on your own and you're doing chest compressions, you're going to have to take a rest sometimes. So every 200 or so compressions, take a 15-second rest. Catch your breath. Or number 3, someone or something tells you to stop those chest compressions. That could be another rescuer, or when the defibrillator arrives, one of the commands on the defibrillator will be, do not touch the patient. So if the defibrillator says don't touch the patient, don't touch the patient. Okay, so the person who brings that defibrillator is in charge of switching it on and following the instructions. You are doing those chest compressions. You do not stop those chest compressions until the defibrillator or something similar tells you to do so. So stage 4 is the defibrillator itself. Now, there's lots of different types of defibrillator on the market. Not all are suitable for community usage, and nowadays the more modern defibrillators are those which have visual display units, little TV screens to actually help the person along and to give instructions. And that's quite important because there is a thing called the Equalities Act, which says you've got to treat everybody equally. So why put a defibrillator in that only talks to you? So anybody who's hard of hearing, doesn't speak English, noisy environment, you're immediately discriminating against them. And that was one of the things when we worked with Co-op, we looked at different equipment, and we actually chose that yellow one on the screen there, which was actually designed for community usage. And it gives you all those instructions, and it'll show you how to actually do the rescue. Now, defibrillators save lives, but only done as part of this chain of survival. And of course, the support of Mid-Counties Co-operative. But remember, you cannot do anything wrong with a defibrillator. Okay, it will not do anything unless that person is in cardiac arrest and needs a shock. So sometimes that defibrillator is going to tell you no shock advised, and sometimes it's going to tell you a shock is advised. So whatever it tells you, just follow. Don't worry about it. Don't try and question it. It's the doctor on scene. So whatever that defibrillator tells you, that's the correct thing to do. So defibrillators save lives, but only as part of this chain of survival where you recognize the patient has a condition, you dial that 999 as quickly as possible, you start those chest compressions within 60 seconds of that phone call, you get that defibrillator on somebody as quickly as possible, and hopefully the ambulance arrives and takes them off to hospital. So in summary, it's working with you to save lives. Okay, it's working with the Mid-Counties Co-operative and ourselves to put as many defibrillators in communities, supported through resilience and sustainability programs, with education to get as many people as we can do out there saving lives as far as possible. Thank you very much, and we'll take some questions now.
Right, so obviously Martin's not here to take any questions, so we're going to move on, and then if there is any questions, we'll try and answer them at the end, if that's okay. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Barbara.
Good evening. I think you all know me. I'm Barbara Dunn, and I'm a community coordinator, and I'm also the lead on getting defibrillators placed onto our sites. That means we need to ensure that the right equipment's used, and actually Martin touched on that, obviously, but that we are legally able to place it on our property, and as importantly, make sure that it's well maintained by our colleagues. So I just wanted to start by giving you a bit of background information, just to give you some context as to why we're doing what we're doing. So we've got 20 regional communities. They're based in our kind of core trading areas: Swindon, Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire, Shropshire, West Mids and Staffordshire. Each regional community has a steering group and is headed up by at least 2 of our senior colleagues, or as we call them, ambassadors. Each regional community steering group works in partnership with the community to identify areas of need and to try to make a real difference in that area. Each of the 20 regional communities has its own 2-year-long partnership with a local charity. Members and colleagues are involved in choosing which local charity that is. If you want to know any more about regional communities, you can just zip onto the Mid-Counties website and look on the community pages. Okay, thank you. So, sorry, due to COVID, we've had to halt all these local meetings, but have now just restarted them. And part of this restart is the pledge that we'll raise money to place defibrillators on each of our main hub sites and food markets. So that's stores basically that don't already house a defibrillator, or there isn't one very, very close that the community has placed already. So as you can see by this slide, our goal is that we install around 20 or more new defibrillators by next September 2022, which obviously is no mean feat in the fundraising department. Thank you, Karen. So to launch, we've actually today installed one at our Codsall food store, which is the hub site of our South Staffs regional community. And you can actually see, well, hopefully you can see on the right hand side of the building, that's where the defib has been placed. So normally we'd hold face-to-face cars in the local area of the installation, but we feel at the moment that it's safer to hold it online. So we're going to promote that cars in store in the local Codswell area, so that the local community can be involved and hopefully join us. But we're also promoting it as a member event like this one, so any of our members can join up and actually be on that cars training or seminar. The link to this will be on our website very shortly, so please feel free to attend. It's a 2-hour session and it will include such topics as what is a sudden cardiac arrest, what is a defibrillator, why they're being placed into communities, how do I undertake chest compressions correctly, and how do I use a defibrillator. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. And then fundraising is already underway. So I just wanted to finish with some great shots of our team at the Radbrook Greens store, who helped fundraising by doing a cycling challenge, and they cycled virtually around the length of their district, which equates to over 275 miles. So far, they've raised an amazing £1,730, which is absolutely amazing. And that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions, please? Nope. Anybody can put questions as we go through anyway on the chat. So if you want to leave a message there, please do. Otherwise, unmute yourselves.
I think we've got a couple that have been sent through via email. Is that right, Lou?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I've got some here. So, Barb, I think you'll be able to answer this first one. How much do we need to raise for a defib on a store?
So each site has the cost of it is around 2,500, but that's everything. That's the equipment, the insurance, the everything. So that's what that's the amount that they're raising.
Okay, and the second question from a member is, if we raise money for a defib, can we place it on one of your sites? Okay.
That's quite a, there's more than one answer to that, because first of all, there's the issue we have to find out whether the building is freehold or leasehold. If it's freehold and everyone's happy, that means that the senior retail team are happy, Martin's happy, etc., then yes, we can put it on. If it's leasehold, we need to get landlord permission in writing before we can start the process. So that's the first thing. I would then put them to Martin, and he would advise whether the equipment that they've purchased is of the spec that we would say, yes, we'll put that on the side of our building. And if there's any issues around that, when we try our hardest to advise them and help them, and if there's an appetite there, or well, not an appetite, but if we're able to install it, then we would help them fundraise for it, and any extra if we needed to change any of the equipment.
Brilliant.
Just as that, I think that's comprehensive.
Yeah, we'll go back to these members after the meeting, can't we, with the answers to these. Yeah. And the final question that's come in via email is, how many of our defibs have been used?
At the moment, the last I knew, which was probably a couple of weeks ago, was at least 15 times. So obviously we don't know any outcomes. We would never ask what the outcomes are, obviously, but we can say that 15 times the defibrillator at least has been taken out of our sites for use as a medical emergency in their local communities.
So definitely worthy to be out in their communities then, these defibs, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. That's the end of all the questions that had been emailed in by members that couldn't attend.
Lovely, thank you.
So, guys, have you got any questions at all, or has the presentation and the videos answered anything that you might have come along with at the beginning?
David's just typing something now.
I was just going to say it was really informative. Martin's got a lovely voice to listen to as well.
Who, Martin?
And yeah, could listen to him for days, I think.
He's got quite a calming voice, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah.
But no, it'll certainly be useful. Those extra information for when we're doing a fundraiser, it just kind of helps put it into context, and will hopefully give us that bit of extra information, that we can then give to people who are looking to give some money, so we can let them know that it's going to a good cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a fantastic site, because you're looking at Keynes Cross, aren't you, in Gloucestershire? It's a fantastic site because there's a big car park. There'd be no issues with parking or anything like that, because sometimes when it's on the high street you think, oh my god, it's in a bit of a precarious position, but at the Keynes Cross site, that would be fantastic.
Okay, Barb, so David's question is, with the first aid training for colleagues online, is there an opportunity for the event line they are doing at Cotsall with colleagues who've done the online training?
Sorry, say that. Sorry, do you
want me to explain it a bit more?
Oh,
yes.
So, David, yes, please.
Because obviously the first aid training is now all online for food colleagues especially, they're not getting any actual CPR practice or anything like that. So is there anything that we could do with this organisation to get colleagues a bit more training? Yes,
there is. That's great, thank you. The only thing that has put in the kibosh on it at the moment is the situation with COVID. So that's why at the moment we're doing it online. But I do agree with you, and we do pay every single time we put up that. Part of the money that we're raising is also for a community awareness programme. So the answer is yes, but just not at the moment, because we just feel it would be better online at the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's one of them bits, especially with cardiac arrest, that you have to do the dummy bit to get a bit more used to it.
Yes.
Before COVID, they would come in and do, because I've done the sessions when we had the defib put in at Swindon. I went along and they were holding sessions at the store, and that was for colleagues and members of the community if they wanted to. And you do get to do that. You do get to use the dummy in that and practice chest compressions and things like that, and actually use a defib as well. So yeah, ideally they are the best type of training sessions, hands-on ones, but at the moment, as Barbara says, until this COVID thing is, well, it's never going to go away, but when it's more suitable for people to have that sort of contact, we'll start those up again, I'm sure.
And David, please feel free to email me if maybe early next year, and we'll have another look at it as to whether we could do something bespoke or what we do, because I'm always open to ideas of how to really push it and make sure that everybody's comfortable. I mean, one of the things I do tell our guys is the fact that they're responsible for looking after it, for making sure it's clean, for making sure the pads and the battery are in date, and for uploading that information onto WebNOS so that it goes, well, obviously goes to Community Heartbeat Trust, but also goes directly to the ambulance services. So that's what they're responsible for, making sure that it is emergency ready, because there's quite a lot of angst over the fact that they think that because the defibrillator is on the side of their building, they're the ones that are going to have to go out. And I know, David, you're pretty amazing actually, because you've trained as a first responder, as a volunteering. So preaching to the converted here, you know exactly what you're talking about and wouldn't have any issues using it, but taking Keynes Cross, which will be having a defibrillator, I'm sure that there are colleagues in there that are nervous that they feel that they are going to have to use it because it's on the side of their building, and that isn't the case.
Is that okay, everybody? Has anybody else got any more questions at all? No, I can't see the screen, so I'm assuming nobody else has got their hand up or anything's coming up. Okay, so all there's left to do then is to thank you for your contributions this evening.